Today we are going to make a clay tile. This is a bas-relief tile where you have additive sculpture where you add things to pop them forward off your clay. For this project you need a slab of clay. If you have a slab roller, that's great. If not, you may need a big rolling pin and about 2 rulers on the side to make it even. These are all the different clay tools that I have available to my students. This is a carving tool, a regular straw, a plastic clay tool, an old pencil. This would be my scratching tool for attaching clay to clay, some slip, which is watery clay for attaching the clay, and some people have like old markers and stuff like that. Also some press molds. This is a nice way to put a pattern onto your clay without hurting the clay. Here we have a prototype for my clay tile, my next clay tile. It's just a simple bird. Notice how I drew my image large. Some kids draw very small and then they struggle. This is a 6x6 piece of paper. I'm going to line it up to the clay, and with a clay tool I'm going to slice the edges to make my 6x6 clay tile. If your teacher gives it to you already cut, that's even better. Do not throw away any of your leftover clay because you can use that to build the rest of your decoration. If the edges are too sharp, you can smooth them out, soften them by rubbing lightly with your fingers. Okay, so now I'm going to place this on top and with a pencil lightly trace my image so that I know where the items are going to go. And your pencil does not have to be sharp. I'm just pressing very lightly. Some people press very hard and then they end up cutting into the clay. When you make your clay thin, you are making it weaker and the chances of it breaking are much higher. To make more interest on the surface of my tile, instead of having just a plain background, I'm going to press some of these press molds. This one has butterflies on it. This one has some swirls. You can do a combination. So I'm going to start here and just lightly press. When you feel the plastic going into the clay, that's when you know that you have pressed hard enough, okay? You can also kind of look at it from the side. See if it's flush against the clay, then you've gone deep enough. So then remove it, lift it, and you have your beautiful pattern, and then you keep going. The next step is to build the vine. If you have anything that looks like a string or a line, I suggest you start with a medium thickness coil. A coil is when you have, and remember this is why I said save your leftovers. A coil is when you make a string of clay. You can use the palms of your hands, only this area, never the fingers because the fingers have bones and it gives you uneven clay. You can also gently roll the clay onto your surface. Here I have just a regular working table, but I have some canvas cloth on top. You can also roll it on top of a scratch piece of paper. That is so that your clay doesn't pick up debris or like dirt particles off your table, okay? Like crayon shavings or pencil shavings, etc. I do not recommend going thin. This is a good thickness for a vine, okay? If it's thinner than about
a pencil, I would say, then it's too thin.
So if this is gonna be part of my vine and this is not long enough, and that's okay, because I can make another piece and connect it and smooth it out and no one will be able to tell. Score and slip. So if this is gonna go there, you would scratch some lines. Some people use a fork, some people use a pencil. I'm using a scratch tool. So you would scratch here, scratch where it's going to touch, and then add your slip. Now that I have attached this coil to the surface using the score and slip method, I notice here that I have a missing piece. So I made a new coil. I'm going to measure how big this needs to be. I would overlap it just a little bit to make sure that you're not short. Use your clay tool to cut to size. Okay, and then I'm going to use the score and slip method again. For anything you attach to your clay, you need to do the scoring, which is the little lines behind the areas that touch. Kind of looks like tic-tac-toe. Here I'm using my scoring tool. Before I had the scoring tool, I would use just a regular pencil and cut some lines into the clay where I would put the slip. The slip is your liquidy clay, okay? And put it on top of your clay, sort of like putting butter on toast. That's what I tell my students, okay? Not too much because then it will ooze out. And then I'm ready to connect it. I'm going to place it on top. And if you have any parts overlapping like that, you can just use your finger to gently rub it smooth. And voila, you have a continuous line of clay. No one will ever know that you connected two pieces. Now time to attach the little leaves. The little leaves, I would just get a little piece of clay, kind of make sort of like a little oval, and then just shape the ends, pointy, and then squish. Okay, so it's kind of like a little seed shape. You see that? Okay, like I said, anything you connect, you have to do the score and slip method. So I'm gonna do a little bit of scoring on the back of this leaf. I'm going to do some scoring where this leaf would go, maybe right here. Then a little bit of slip and connect. All right, that one's a little small. I may go a little bit larger. And if you wanted, for example, that little line in the center of the leaf to make it look more realistic, I would draw it gently with a pencil. Okay, wish me luck. I have to make all those leaves and I'll be back in a minute to show you how to make the main focal point, which in this case is my bird. Now that I'm done with the background, I'm ready to add the main focal point or the main character of my tile scene, which is this beautiful little bird. I used just regular scissors to cut him out. And now I have this smaller piece of a slab of clay. Make sure it's not too thin so that it doesn't break on you. I'm going to place my little bird there. And carefully with a clay tool, you can trace first with pencil gently around your animal or subject. And then with a clay tool, you are going to slice through. Now some kids, when they slice into the clay, they go up and down like a saw. You want to start maybe with the edge and gently slice through the clay, leaving your clay tool in the clay. So you can keep going this way. And I'm done with this part. Then I'm going to start here
And then I'm going to start here and remove that. Okay, you can twirl it and keep going. And I have my main
subject. If it's a little jagged on the edges, just rub it smooth with your fingers. The last step to my tile was to attach this little wing to make it pop even a little bit further, so it gives it more of a 3D effect. I did shape it to be about the same size as the one underneath, and I definitely used the score and slip method to connect it to the bird. All right, so I have about 3 surfaces: the original tile, the vine, the bird, and then of course the little wing. So I have 3 different surfaces by the time you add the wing. The last thing I would recommend is fine details. So for example, here on my bird, I have a little beak, maybe the little eye, maybe some feather pattern on the wings, maybe the feet. And I told my students, if they have, for example, a butterfly where it has very thin lines for the antennas, etc., then you want to leave that alone and add it with an atomizer. An atomizer is a little bottle with a little fine tip. It's sort of like a pen with glaze inside, and then you squeeze it and you can draw, you can write fine lines on the clay with the atomizer. That's how I did these little lines on the inside of the turtle. You see that? And the eye. So that's for like really, really fine details. On my bird, all I have left to do is the little eye, maybe little eyelashes if you want. When you scratch into the clay, you always have little excess clay, so just kind of gently remove it or press it in and soften it in. Okay, maybe the little beak here, just a little curve with a little dot. There we go. And maybe on the wing, I could add some lines just for more interest so it's not so plain. Okay, if you are noticing when you scratch onto the clay, you have that little excess clay, so just kind of like rub it off or dust it off. I love it. I love the way it turned out. Now this clay has to dry for about 5 to 8 days, depending on how thick it is, maybe a little longer. I will put it on a shelf, let it dry, let all the water evaporate. You never put wet clay in the kiln. Then it will go and get fired in the kiln. It will be about this color. It's Cinco Blanco clay or Texas Longhorn, whatever clay you're using. And then once it is fired, it becomes bisqueware. We use slow fire glazes like Stroke and Coat. There's many other different brands. These are the best ones that we have found. And definitely use a brush that has soft bristles. Okay, we like these camel hair watercolor brushes. And when you start painting, make sure that you do 2 layers per color. So I had a student help me paint this one with the glazes, and you can see here when you only do 1 layer, it becomes lighter. It looks a little more see-through like watercolor, so you want to do at least 2 layers. I would never do more than 3 layers, otherwise it's just too thick. Okay, and then it goes in the kiln a second time, and it will be shiny by the time you take it home. It is an official piece of a ceramics art project. Okay, have fun.